Welcome back to the McCoy Leadership Podcast, elevating your impact through valuable insights and conversations about leadership. Welcome back to the McCoy Leadership Podcast, and today we're super excited to have Randy Bridge with us. Randy's an Army veteran and a lifelong blue-collar leader who worked his way up from the shop floor to senior leadership. I think Randy and I have a few things in common, and maybe we'll get into some of those. But Randy, welcome. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend with us and our listeners. Tell us a little bit about your journey.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Amos. It's great to be here. I started in a pretty unconventional way, I guess. I was in the military right out of high school. Went to Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm. Came back from there. I was actually homeless for a while, but I had some great assistance from my sisters, and they kind of helped me out of that. And I was able to gradually work my way up into a job at the railroad. So once I went to work for the railroad, I started out cleaning toilets on the midnight shift, which is super glamorous.
Yes, absolutely.
But from there, I worked my way up to foreman, then manager, and then senior manager, and then director.
Now, wait a minute. Now, time out. So you went to the military and you got a bunch of skills of something, right?
Yep.
And you got out of the military and you went and started at the bottom.
Yeah.
Well, why would you ever do that?
Well, I was a combat engineer, and the skills don't really translate that well.
There are some times you probably wish they did.
Right. I definitely wish they did. And some of that was, part of it was logistics, which I ended up kind of going back into in the railroad. So I ended up in the reserves in the ammunition supply unit. And we ended up, I ended up going into supply in the railroad. So that's where my management career kind of started. And now they cut that director job and moved me back to Arkansas here. So now I'm back in the mechanical department in a locomotive rebuild facility, managing on the floor. So, and I'm glad for that cut, because it really helped me understand that leading, especially from hundreds of miles away, is not the greatest thing in the world. You don't really have perspective on what's actually going on out there, and you're making decisions that are based on numbers, basically. So I don't lead by spreadsheets anymore, which is a beautiful thing in my mind, and it's, I don't know, it's pretty great being back with the crews with hands on.
So we often, within industry, so often we take the guy that maybe in your case, you started cleaning the toilets on second shift and you were really good at it. They were really clean and they said, hey, we want to make you the supervisor of toilet cleaning. Then eventually you make your way up and you have this amazing journey that you went from literally at the bottom, moving your way into an executive leadership role. Along that way, were there people that kind of helped you gain new skills, or were the exact same skills that you had cleaning toilets, did they work all the way through and you never had to learn anything new?
Well, oddly enough, I had a lot of help. So they kind of throw you into a leadership supervisor job. They give you about 2 months worth of training. You shadow other supervisors, and then all of a sudden you're leading mechanics, electricians, laborers. So it's not just, super toilet cleaner guy, but yeah, I had a lot of help from supervisors that were already in the positions. And actually, once I got in management role, I had a leader. His name's Craig Mitchell. I'm sure he won't mind if I use his name. He's become a very good friend and a mentor to me. So we're actually the same age, but he's a director now at our headquarters. But that guy has helped me more than anything, and he's taught me really how to be a leader.
And I was kind of making fun of or making light of, rather, but what I was really curious about, and you answered it, is that at the end of the day, every step along the way, we tell people when we're coaching leaders that are bringing new managers on, you don't get any magical powers with that title. So you really need to help people get the skills they need. They might be the perfect candidate, but without help and skills, you can't really get there. So, and I'm just going to say now for all of our listeners, as many maybe can hear it if you listen on a regular basis, I apologize for my voice today. I'm just getting over the flu, but I didn't want to miss the opportunity to talk with Randy today. And so we're going to suffer through it. So if you hear me coughing or my voice getting softer and softer, that's why. So what are you doing now? You got some other things happening along with what you're working. So what are you working on here?
I do. I still have 4 years left to go till retirement. And I thought, what the hell am I going to do after retirement? So I decided to start writing. And around that, I'm starting to build a business, Gray Eagle Media Group. And basically that is helping new leaders become better leaders. I've noticed that there's especially in the blue collar trades, there's a gross lack of leadership out there. And I don't know that it's anybody's fault, but I just don't think that they're getting the help that they need in some respects. So I wanted to be a guy that could help them through that. I wrote a book called Hard Hat Philosophy, and it's basically my leadership philosophy, and it's pretty simple. It boils down to three things: show up, do good work, and take care of your people. That's it.
Oh,
That's really all there is to it.
It can't be that simple.
It's as simple as that. Really, it is. At the end of the day, I mean, I expand into those. There's a lot that goes into those three things, but
it is amazing. I was just talking about this, excuse me, at a conference about a week ago with a group of people, and I have a book. You would probably, I've talked about it before, but if you can find a copy of it, you would love it. It's called it was published in 1952, and it's called The Plant Executive's Handbook. And it goes through how to run a manufacturing plant in 1952, everything from scheduling, maintenance, work orders, people. And the one thing that was so different, now 1952, post-World War II, so almost everybody in leadership in the United States was ex-military at that time period. So they were coming home, getting out of the military, going to work. Hey, you were a corporal or general, whatever. You're going to lead our business. And the way they led was really to just tell people in no uncertain terms, this is what you're going to do. When they did it right, they took care of them. When they didn't do it right, well, they didn't take care of them or they got rid of them. And we were talking about that. Now, in today's world, there are people listening right now saying, oh my goodness, that would be horrible. Like, you can't do that. You got to coddle them and you got to, and the real truth is it is that simple, but we've overcomplicated it. The great John Maxwell says life is simple, but keeping it simple is difficult.
that's fact.
Yeah, I love that. So I'm curious, what are some of the, over your years, what are some of the biggest challenges you've run into with your simplistic three-step leadership philosophy? What are some of the biggest obstacles you run into?
There's a lot. Over a 3-year period, we were going through a time where we were laying a lot of people off. That was probably the toughest part of my career, managing through that stuff. And here's what nobody really tells you about that. sometimes you don't get to save people. Sometimes it's you can't take care of everyone. Sometimes it's just out of your control. So you can't fix the system. You can only control how you show up in the moment. So that's where leadership really gets real for me. You don't hide. You can't sugarcoat it. You can't blame. You just have to stay steady and work through it. But that was by far the worst time that I had. There's other things though. Sometimes you don't have you have responsibility without authority. So sometimes you're required to do things that are kind of go against your philosophy, just as part of keeping the job. So managing through that is probably almost as difficult as managing through layoffs, right? It's just you have to manage up and down. So with that being said,
well, I'm curious there. It's something I went through, and I think many people do. I'm curious your thoughts. How, I came to believe now, if I was working somewhere and they were really asking me to do something that was completely against my values, well, of course I would leave, and most people would. But the number of times I had to do things that maybe at the moment I didn't agree with, like I was adamant behind closed doors, so to speak, with my boss. I don't like this, but I'll do it because you're telling me I have to do it. And when you're in that growth pattern and, you're working from the bottom up, how many times have you seen that really it's not that it was against what you believed or what others believed? It was your understanding of what was happening. How many times was it that as opposed to really, I don't like this?
I'd say, I don't know, probably a handful. Most times I try to have a really good grasp on what they're trying to do and the big picture. Because there are times where you don't see the whole story, right? So there have been a handful of times where that's happened, but for the most part, I would say it's been true more than it hasn't.
And I'll give you an example. I know one of my first jobs in a concrete block plant, one of the owners had come to me and said, I want a rack built and put in the locker room to hold rain jackets. My job was to run the plant. And I'm thinking, okay. A couple weeks went by and I didn't have it done. And he came to me, he said, I want a rack in there to hold rain jackets. Like, can you have the maintenance crew build a heavy duty rack and it'll hold rain jackets for the forklift drivers and the people that work outside? I said, yeah. I said, it's just not really at the top of my list right now because, there's other things happening, this. And he looked at me and he said, you do know I'm one of the owners and, hence I kind of sign your paycheck every week. I ask you to get it done, just get it done. And I thought, well, that's bizarre. So I hurried up and I got it done. Well, later I found out that there was a whole issue happening behind the scenes within the family. It was a family-owned business. And, his dad or brother or sister or whoever it was, saying, hey, I want this done immediately. And, so it was coming down to me. And although that was something that I just thought was stupid, at the end of the day, well, just get it done. And you find out later that there's more to the story. And I guess what I learned out of that was many times as you're growing in your own position, you don't always have all of the information and the data. And sometimes it's not as bad as you think it is.
Yeah, I think that's probably accurate. But there are times where you're kind of forced to be in the middle, especially in a middle management type role or a supervisory type role, where you have to kind of be what I call the shock absorber. So you take it from kind of both sides. And sometimes you just have to absorb it either way. I mean, there's a lot of changes that happen that the fellas on the floor or the ladies on the floor don't like. But the key is translating that. So even if you don't like it, it's just what we have to do, right? So that's kind of the way I look at that, but it's generally not fun, right?
Yes. Switching gears slightly, in reading your material, I had seen some information about, you talk about how leaders sometimes can lose trust in their employees without realizing it. And that was kind of interesting to me, and I wanted to hear more of your thoughts on that.
So, from my point of view, it's, I think that without realizing it, you grow kind of a bias to some workers. You take care of your workhorses, right? And then there's folks in there that may have some value doing other different things, but they don't have value in the things that you may need at the time. So I feel like that really erodes the trust that you have in your folks, or that your folks have in you, for that matter. If you don't, I talk about the show up piece of my philosophy, and part of that is being fair, being fair and making sure that you have trust across the board. That it's hard because there's so many different people, so many different personalities, but if you lose your workers' trust, they won't do anything for you. They just won't. If you have their trust and their loyalty, them guys walk through the gates of hell. They really will. And it's really that simple from what I've seen. I mean, I've been doing this kind of work for 27 years, and I've been with hundreds of crews. But generally, if you don't have the trust, you don't have anything.
And I wonder as well, so many times when it's from the employee side to the leader side, if that leader isn't showing up at the most crucial times, there's a problem, and somebody higher up has come and said, this team is terrible. They've done this, this, and this. And the leader knows that that's not quite true. If that leader doesn't stand up and say, wait a minute, I know why this happened, and here's what it is, and here's what we're doing to fix it, the employees will lose that trust very quickly.
100% of the time. And you have to, that's part of taking care of your people. I mean, that's just, you have to stand up and say, hey, this is what happened. This is what actually happened. It wasn't what you're thinking, because a lot of times they don't have the context when they're tearing people apart. So if you're not stepping up, giving them that context, and basically having your people's back, when something like that happens, that trust is gone. If that gets around that you did that, the trust is simply, it vanishes.
And if you have a good relationship with those people and you eventually have a bad day, they'll let that slide, right?
Yep, absolutely. They'll absolutely let it slide. As long as you come back and say, hey, this is what happened. Just be honest and upfront with them. They'll generally, give you a little crap about it, and you'll just go on with your lives, right?
Back in, I think it was 04 or 05, we had a cement shortage here in the United States, and all cement block producers, anybody used powdered cement, they were put on a voucher program. You could only get so many loads. And excuse me, one day one of my guys came to me in the plant, and I was busy doing something else. And he came and he said, Amos, he said, we have a load of white cement. And he started to say something else, and I just kind of looked at him. I'm like, what's the question? He's like, well, I don't know what to do with it. I'm like, it goes in the white cement bin. Where do you think it goes? And I went back to doing what I was doing. And then I got to thinking about it, and I was like, why did he even come ask me? Like, this doesn't make any sense. I'm like, did I miss something? So by this time, the cement's already blown in the bin. I walk back over and I'm like, what? He said, it didn't have our name on it, the load. It had the next company's name on it. And I'm like, oh no. So I look at it and it was a sister company. And we had taken their load of cement and there was no more cement to be had. And well, anyhow, this got everybody all, upset. And until it got to upper management, they had went around. I was busy doing something else. They had went around and talked to everybody. And when they finally came to me, my boss said, well, I want to hear your side of the story. And I remember saying, wait a minute, what are you talking about? What side of the story? There's only one thing that happened. And I just laid it out. I wasn't paying attention, so on and so forth. And one thing led to the next. And I remember on that end, he looked at me, my boss, and said, like, I'm mad right now, but I understand. And we'll talk about this later. And later he explained to me that my whole crew had tried to cover for me. Even though I am the one that caused it, they tried to kind of sweep it under the rug. They weren't lying, but they were trying to make it not as bad as it was. And it always stuck with me that by telling the truth and just saying, this is what happened, I caused it, and taking that, but it always really resonated with me that because I worked well with them, they tried to kind of cover for me.
Yeah, that's a beautiful relationship you have there. I mean, a lot of times I go into work and we'll get our butts chewed for some reason. A locomotive didn't make the release list, something like that. I have a guy that you have to talk to about it, and it's generally, I'll go and talk to him, but I'll take the blame from the higher ups. It's my fault at the end of the day. The way I look at things is crap rolls downhill, and it just ends up right here. I don't let it get past me to the guys, but obviously if somebody's messing up, you have to have a conversation with them and say, hey, this is not okay. and we're not going to do this anymore. But when it comes to taking the heat from the higher ups, I'm generally kind of the, I don't know what you'd call it. I guess the wall between them.
So I was thinking about, as I was getting ready for this interview, we've both over the years had lots and lots of people. You said you've had hundreds of team members. And one of the unique things about manufacturing of any type or any type of, we'll say, floor work, many times the leaders over the years have hundreds and hundreds of people that report to them. That also means that they have hundreds and hundreds of people that could call in sick from time to time. And I'm always curious, and if you're willing and won't hurt anybody's feelings, what's the craziest call-in sick thing that you've ever had? Like somebody called in and their reason for calling in sick was just like, jaw-dropping. What was the best one you've ever had?
Oh, okay. So I come from Nebraska, Wyoming area. That's where I grew up, right? Colder weather, a lot of snow. I had a fella. This is my second time in Arkansas. I've moved like 6 times with the railroad. But I came down here, and I think I was here about a month and a half. This guy calls in because there's a chance of snow. And I just about lost my mind. I said, what in the hell do you mean because there's a chance of snow? Maybe it will, maybe it won't. You got to come into work. And I didn't realize what happens down here when it snows. They don't get a lot of snow, so they're not prepared for it. And you may be stuck on the road for a couple of hours. So that was kind of on me, but it struck me as just ridiculous, coming from, Nebraska. It was like, what the hell? I mean, it'll snow a foot and we'll still get to work, right? But some of these guys live 30, 40 miles away. So, and then I tried to go to work, and it was like, holy crap, took 2 hours to get to work.
Yep.
So that was probably the one that struck me as the most insane anyway.
The best one that I ever had was very early in my career. I still laugh before I can get it out. So a guy called in sick, left a message first thing in the morning, and I came in, of course, checked my messages, and I had this message, and he said he would not be in. He had, he said he would not be in. His anal glaucoma was acting up. Now this
Can't
was
see his ass coming to work.
You got it. I had no idea being young. That was before we all had internet at every desk, and I'm like trying to figure out what anal glaucoma is. And he come in the next day, and I just asked him. So I've never heard of such a thing, and he started laughing and said I couldn't see my rear end coming to work, and I was like, oh my goodness. Of all things, the only other one I have to mention now was I had a guy call in say he would not be in because his truck didn't want to start. Well, that's not an uncommon reason. Well, the next day I overheard him. He didn't know I was on the corner of the lunchroom, and he was telling the guys, he said, I walked outside yesterday morning, asked my truck to start, and it didn't start. So I called Amos and told him my truck didn't want to start. And I said, uh-huh. But anyhow,
yeah.
And that is we just have an opportunity in that realm that you have so many people that it's always fun to hear, what's the craziest thing you've heard?
Yeah. What gets me on there was a lot of times this happens. Somebody will say, I'm going to be sick on Friday, and it's Monday. You're thinking, how the hell do you know you're going to be sick on Friday?
Yes.
That one strikes me as, so yeah, it's crazy stuff comes up in that.
So before we go into our last little segment, I want to make sure, where can people find out more about you? Where can they get the book?
Hardhatphilosophy.com. You can go there. There's other tools and resources. And it's also available on Amazon in Kindle version, paperback, and hardcover.
Awesome. So we end every episode with kind of a couple of rapid fire questions. I ask every guest the same set of questions, and someday I'm going to publish all those after all my guests become super famous and stuff, and then I'll become famous, right? But the first question, throughout your career, what's the single best piece of advice that somebody's given you?
Oh, it's gotten so many. I would say probably the best advice was don't take things to heart. Because I'm kind of a sensitive fella, I'm a big guy, but kind of sensitive. So one of my mentors early on said, you take things to heart too much. Don't take anything to heart. Just let it roll off your back like a duck's back. So that kind of stuck with me. I think that one's probably the best advice I've ever got.
I like it. Second question. Excuse me. Throughout your career, what has been your go-to book that you have went to for good insights?
Probably my favorite is How to Win Friends and Influence People.
I love it. Dale Carnegie.
Yeah.
Next question. If we could magically get all the school administrators from across the world into one room, and you had an opportunity to tell them what you think would be the best thing they could do to make for a student's career to turn out a better, well-rounded, ready-for-work student out of high school, what would that one thing be?
Train them how to balance a checkbook.
Yes.
They don't do that. It just boggles my mind. That and in the current day and age, I would say we have got to teach folks how to do things in an AI world. AI is coming. And I think it's eventually going to take a lot of jobs. So I think that preparing those folks for what's coming upon us, I think is probably the biggest thing that they could do.
And excuse me, last question with that as a good segue, with all the new technology that's coming at us so rapidly, what are you actually using today that you find most useful?
I use Claude AI. I use that as an editor. So I'm almost done with my second book now, and it's I'm using that to do like the line editing of it. So, and it's super helpful. Something you'd have to send off and pay somebody a couple $1,000s for is now Claude does it, and it does a damn good job of it.
Yes. Well, Randy, thank you so much for spending time with a auctioneer that has no voice hardly left at all and a leadership guy. But thank you for spending time with our listeners, and we appreciate having you on today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. Really has.
Absolutely. And for our guest, if you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to check out our past episodes, and don't forget to give us 5 stars on whatever platform you're listening. And then you also get alerts when the new episodes come out. Until next time, we appreciate all of you.